Your child has to shatter and you have to become an adult. But I think there was so much harm in the delusion that I lived for so many years, because what I ended up doing was creating more delusion on top of more delusion on top of more delusion, because what I had, or remind me to tell you about the descendant, I started and I didn't finish. The delusion that I had just created more and more and more. Whereas she's more raw in being honest or being with the truth, or at least seeking.
That makes so much sense, what you just said. It does.
So that's why I said entre comillas. Obviously, I know that it's
Because it's so much harder when it's so long of the same thing.
yes, and it's been 45
I
years
believe
of
that.
delusion.
I actually believe that, because if I would have stayed, I always believe that if I would have stayed longer with my mom in that type of environment, I would have not been who I am today. And thank God I didn't. I say it all the time, because if I would have turned out anything like her in the way that she is, it's just, I wouldn't even be the mother I am, the wife I am. I mean, I wouldn't be me, who I am right now, at all. And
But that's also a level of consciousness.
Right.
Because how many people are in a situation like that, or in a situation like mine, and stay in the delusion, or
Oh, yeah, man.
you stay angry and whatnot. And so that's the evolvement of the human being.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. It makes sense.
But I really see the level and the layers of delusion and how detrimental that was. And you, despite tricking and despite jail and despite all of your stuff, you still have an innocent archetype. So you're very prone to delusion.
Yeah.
Very prone
My
to
mom
delusion, and
calls
you've
me-
had a harder life than me.
My
On
mom
paper.
calls me Alice in Wonderland. She's like, wake up from your dream, Alicita. I'm like, shut
So
up.
look, you have these two girls sitting next to each other, and similar in terms of background and difficulty and living on the streets and such, but she's much more awake in the sense of the reality, where you're more like me in the sense of the delusion. Like my mom used to say, and my dad used to say when I was little, todo mundo no mommy papi, everyone's not mommy and daddy. And I'm still like I mean, she's a great, we did find a real.
Well, she is like
But,
all the time.
you know, but last night I couldn't sleep, and I started thinking about how many people in my life were surrogate mothers that hurt me, because I was in that whole seeking, and I had to become the mother. I had to become the adult. Like, that's just, there was not gonna be someone. It had to be me. It had to be you. So when your mom says Alice in Wonderland, she's picking up on your Neptune.
I went through that so many times with different women in my life, and it was me trying to fulfill that what I didn't have with my mom, to the point where even when I owned my husband, I even said this maybe like a year ago. I told my husband, I was like, damn, I used to bash your mother because I didn't want that anymore. I didn't want another woman coming into my life and being fake, or like, you know, being what I thought could be and wasn't. And she ended up being a great woman. I get along with her great, more than I ever did through our first couple of years of our marriage. I mean, I would bash her all the time.
That was you.
Yeah, and it was because of the fear of letting another woman into my life and thinking that she was gonna hurt me.
Well, that's probably good, because you started out from a low place,
Right.
and you got to accept the reality that she's much better than you
Oh,
expected.
yes.
It's better than to think, oh my God, she's great, and then oh no.
Oh,
she's
no,
not.
yeah, I went through that many times.
Yeah.
So what you're saying,
Yeah, that was a pattern of mine, oof,
yeah,
big time. So let me tell you about the descendant. So in your chart, you're gonna have this ascendant that is like your visible personality and things like that. The descendant is the shadow. So what you have in your descendant, the archetype, the sign, the planet, whatever you wanna call it, the god, the myth, is going to be your shadow. That's gonna give you a quick take on a person. So the minute you look at someone's 7th house cusp, not only are you knowing the moment of conception, not only are you knowing the house that the parents created, but you're also knowing their shadow. So it's very, very telling in just a snapshot. What time is it?
Just before. Oh, I'm sorry, 11:30.
Oh, okay.
that was a 9, whoa.
swear. Wow.
Okay. Number 6. The relationship, this is super important, this is what the whole model is based on, is based on a creation myth. I want to clarify, creation myth and origin story is the same thing, okay? There's, in the book, where's the little myth?
Marshall.
Okay. In the myth book, you're going to see creation story, and it's the exact same thing as the origin, how it all began. So creation myth and origin story, same thing. The myth that you're living, the creation, same. So just make a note and know that. Who wants to share a relationship that they're in? Okay. How did you meet?
I met my husband through my daughter's father.
Through my daughter's father. So he was friends?
They were acquaintances. They weren't really friends, but they went to high school together.
So tell me, how did you meet him though? And what's the story?
He went to go pick something up from him. So I'm thinking like him bad.
Okay.
And he came out of the house, and when he came out of the house, it's crazy because my husband's ex-wife is actually my daughter's father's ex.
Wait.
Yeah, I did not.
Is this
What
reality?
was that?
I know.
Okay,
Wait, so
we
that's
need
worse
notes.
than her family. What
Take
was that?
They all went to high school together. I've always lived in Carroll City. They lived in Kendall, so but my husband and my daughter's father, they used to play on the football team together and everything, but they weren't like close or anything like that. And then my ex dated my husband's wife, ex-wife, I mean, maybe like a year before or a couple months before or something. And then when they broke up, she got with my husband. And they dated.
So-
And they had a daughter together. I met my ex and I had my daughter with him, and they knew each other though. Yeah.
It's a small world.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was picking up something bad.
Yeah, and he came out of the house, and when he came out of the house, my ex introduced me to him because I was sitting in the car, and the only thing I ever like really remembered about him that I loved, like from the moment I met him, was that he was very like respectful, very well mannered from everybody that I knew in my life or in my ex's life.
Okay.
He came up and he said, "Oh, nice to meet you." He actually reached into the car, shook my hand, and even when we were leaving, he was like, "Well, it was very nice to meet you." And then he basically was telling us like to have a good day and everything, which was like weird because, you're going over there to pick up drugs, my daughter's father, because that's what he did. And I didn't even know what he was actually picking up because it was in a bag, and I wasn't pregnant yet. And when we were leaving, to hear all that, I was like, "Oh, am I used to
Okay,
that?"
but you were not with
No.
the daughter's father.
Yeah, I was with my daughter's father.
Okay, so then wait, that's how you met, but then how did you consummate your relationship? Like, how did you start dating?
Oh, okay. So for years, we would run into each other everywhere in different areas, like stoplights, at the same red light. You would be in the next car over. We would run into each other.
Kismet.
Everywhere. And then from one moment to the next, I had heard that he had gotten snitched on, and he ended up going to jail for 3 years.
Did you get stitches?
So I didn't. So I never ran into him during that time. Obviously, he was locked up. But one day, just so happened I was going to court against my daughter's father, and he was covering for my husband was covering for his brother at a parking lot that they owned across the street from the courthouse. And I went to go park my car, and he wasn't there at the moment. His brother was. But then when I came back out of to go to the parking garage to pick up my car, he was there, and he liked me or whatever, and he was just like, "Hey, what's up?" And I didn't recognize him. This was 3 years later, and he introduced himself as Joe instead of Joab. If he would have said Joab, I would have known who the hell he was. But I was just like, "Oh, he's a good-looking guy." But I was so shy that I literally I was like, "Oh," and I went to the car and I took off. I actually waved. I beat the horn like an idiot, and I waved at him, and then I took off. And When I was going to get on the highway, somebody told me you have to go back and make up something that you had to go back for. I literally went back.
I was waiting, okay.
Picked up there, I lied to him and I told him that I left my driver's license inside my lawyer's office. And then when I came back, he just started talking to me and he told me. I even told him I was there for my daughter's father and everything, and he knew who I was. But he was just embarrassed that he thought, oh, if I mention that I'm Joab, she's gonna know who I was and that I was in jail. And he was ashamed of that. So him being ashamed of that, I didn't find out who he was until a week after we were already talking, and he lied to me and told me, oh, my truck's in the shop, I need you to come pick me up. And when I went to go pick him up, I ended up I'm getting close to his house, and I made a left onto that same block where I first met him. And I realized when he's telling me, oh, it's like the fourth house on the left, I'm like, wait a minute, your name's not Joe, it's Joab. And that's when I realized who I was dating.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what was your first fight?
Our first fight was when we were 2 months together, and he had gotten into an argument with his daughter's mother. And me defending her, not defending her, but I was like, I've always been the one to like make everybody neutral. And I told him, I was like, you can't yell at her, call her names or anything like that when you fight, because she's not obligated to you and you're not obligated to her anymore. And that's your daughter's mother, you guys have to get along. And he was like, what the hell, don't be telling me what to do. And he called me a bitch. And I was just like, what? I was like, that's the last time you're gonna call me a bitch. And then we argue, but like, you know, when we argue, it's like really funny because I'm the one that's always like, I calm it down right away. And he hates that about me, but
Okay, so the first fight. So
yeah,
read
was
what's
'cause of
here.
that. Based on a couple met in their first fight.
The creation story. This creation story is based on how you met in your first fight. This is going to take your whole system,
And it's crazy.
Marsha and Joe, and is going to do what? Crack it.
Yeah.
The fight is the crack.
Yeah, and
What else on the board was whole that cracked? What
Well,
else
him
was a
being-
system that was whole
The,
that
No,
cracked?
like the
It's on
reason.
the board.
The reason. Oh.
oh, oh,
The structure.
The whole-
You were whole.
Yeah.
You came from wholeness, this puzzle, God, whatever. You decided to experience yourself. You cracked, and you caused the original sin. Same thing happened.
Yeah.
The way that you meet has to have some sort of crack in the story. In your case, he lied, he was ashamed, you lied because you made up to go back.
Yeah.
When you guys argue, because most couples have the same fight over and over and over again, or have you ever been in your skinny cow, what's the reason you fight?
I mean, the two biggest fights that we've ever had was due to his infidelity.
Okay, lying.
Yeah.
And when he was ashamed of it?
Oh yeah. No.
You are having the same fight over and over again. The only way to redo this, it's called renegotiation,
Yeah. That's what we.
is you have to go back to the origin and start a whole new origin story. My season 7 is coming out in a couple days of my podcast, and I talk at the beginning because I just heard the whole season together, but since I recorded it fragmented, it's like 2 whole different seasons. One's about my divorce and one's about the cancer, but it's been this whole year. And I talked about that. And we were renegotiating, but then it fell through. And that isn't every person. But in relationships, you are constantly renegotiating. Usually it's every 7 years, That's why the 7, the 14, the 21, the 28 people have these 7-year itch type of things. And we have to renegotiate the original creation story. Most couples don't. What they end up doing is they end up putting it under the rug, the shit piles up. Then at the 14, there's another big, or 21. Sometimes people just end up getting divorced, or they keep just piling, or they stay for the kids. And the kids are 28, or whatever, they're off to college, and then
Our
people
14 is
lose
next
their
year.
relationship. Okay, so
That's why we
14 is
communicate
next
a lot.
year, and A, if you renegotiated,
Yeah.
then you're gonna have a crisis from your renegotiation. And I would ask you, what was your, if you were my client, what's your renegotiation story? What happened? Look at the new myth and what fight came from there, because every system has a crack. Every system is a creation myth, a cosmic egg intact, and every system has a crack in it. And the crack is, how did you meet? It's the conception. But instead of being the conception of you with your mom and dad having sex, it's the conception of when you and your spouse got together.
Right.
So it's the same thing. It's just in relationships. And we're going to elaborate this more and more. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So if you do not renegotiate at that crisis point, exactly when, at 9 months of relationship, at 7 months of marriage, I wasn't allowed. I'm only one side of the relationship. I couldn't make him renegotiate. It ended up in divorce. If we could have gone through it, we could have renegotiated, we could have created a new myth, 7 years from then, we would have had another crisis. Or, as many couples, like I said, they don't renegotiate, they push it under the rug, just like when you have a crisis in your skinny cows in your personal life, in your personal system, and then you drink away rather than going to therapy, let's say. 14 years later, the problem shows up, 21, 28, 35, it keeps showing up. And then you eventually, in my case, at 45, everything is coming to a halt. And in relationships, the same thing happens. If you push it under the rug, you can be with the person for 58 years or whatever, but you're still having the same fight from the day one that you met. And then that's just a personal decision if people want to stay together, but that's not, in my personal opinion, life. You renegotiate and then you build. Does this make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So those are the tenets of this model. We'll continue on Thursday, and then we'll put it into play, and I'll teach you how to do sessions with it. Any questions before we go? Good? Okay.